Elliot goes, I'm catching the live. Is this really happening? Elliot, this is for real. You're with
Yes.
us.
And I read all of your comments on YouTube, so I have a new microphone, and hopefully this is going to be a lot better for you all.
Dude, it
I
took
don't.
us, what, 2 years to figure that shit out? People have been complaining about your audio. But that's how good the content is we don't even have to care. We're like, yeah, we're lazy.
Everyone's like, I love your videos, but please fix your audio.
That's so funny.
Yep.
I'm going to shout out our new members real quick. We just, right now, Tom Dent. Thanks for joining, Tom. Appreciate you. That sounds like a hero's name, Tom Dent.
That's awesome. Actually,
Julia Corey,
I think
Peter Dunbar.
I think Peter was the one that actually told me to get a new microphone.
Was it Peter?
Yeah, I think so. It's so funny how I care and I listen to everyone.
Julie Corey, Peter Dunbar, Anthony Vincent, Cam something. Google's cutting your name off, so sorry. Soren Tutu, Dean Goodwin, William Chen, and Elliot Phibb. Thank you for your $3 and for being here. We love you dearly and deeply. And John, I'm going to read the questions from YouTube first because they don't make them into Restream if they're asked ahead of time.
Got it.
All right, we're diving in. Soren Tutu, been waiting the whole week for tonight. I hope you guys are doing great. Is there any way to measure vanity metrics only by going for the data in Google Analytics and AdWords?
So is it something we could pull up on the screen here?
No, it's
got it.
pre-restream. Well, you know what I can do? I'll paste it in. Hold on. I'm a problem solver. You ready for this?
That's okay. Let's see. All right. Hey, look at that. Is there any way to measure vanity metrics only by going for the data in Google Analytics and AdWords? Yes. When you say measure, so some things that I measure is make sure you link up your analytics with your Google Ads, import the time on site, which is called session duration, pages per session, and bounce rate. Don't give too much weight to bounce rate because you can have a 10% conversion rate with a 90% bounce rate. So bounce rate isn't really a good metric to measure. It's a good indicator, though, if you're comparing it to other campaigns. But pages per session and time on site is one thing that I really like, especially when we're testing new keywords. So you can actually develop your own conversion action from analytics that is going into your custom audience site settings and doing an engagement conversion. That means visiting more than 3 pages, spending longer than 2 minutes. Those are things you can actually develop as an event inside of analytics. Convert that event into a goal, which means your goal is just tracking an event. That conversion action can be imported into your Google Ads account. And then take that goal that you've imported in your Google Ads account as a conversion, mark it as a secondary conversion, not a primary, because you don't want to have your bidding strategy learn from it just yet. But you'll want to track your normal conversions that you're normally going to track, but you'll identify things that you might have possibly shut off too soon or maybe didn't give enough time because, like, man, when people Google this keyword, they stay long, they go to multiple pages. Give that more time and you're going to start to see those convert. So those are vanity metrics that I like to track if I'm testing something, but I do not count them as a primary conversion. So it's not going to give you a cost per conversion and it's not going to learn only on those people because you might have people that are looking for some good information, but maybe not ready to engage. And that's not what you want to teach the algorithm or even the bidding strategy or the conversion action that this is what you want. So use it for your own knowledge internally and make adjustments off of that to then see if your primary conversion actions start to convert.
You don't think Google uses secondary conversion actions at all in their algorithm? I know they say they don't.
Yeah, you know what's funny is it's hard to tell. I know they watch everything because they already have that beta in that basically says, hey, like revenue and cost per conversion, and they're already doing conversion tracking without you actually even setting it up. So they know that stuff, and they're finding those people. But what this is going to do is say, hey, before Google told you not to do that, which they're not really going to do just yet. They probably will do that one day, but it'll teach you how to identify and warm up traffic that you may have ignored.
Peter Dunbar, what size has worked the best for PMax for HTML5, or do you even add them to the campaign?
What sizes for HTML5?
I don't understand that question.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, Peter, can you clarify in the chat and we'll come back to you?
Let me just hop into an asset group real quickly. I think
video
you're
size?
No, I think you're looking at the just give me 1 second. This is of course running slow since I'm hopping in here to take a look.
Do you want me to send you the link?
No, this would be good. It's just
I'm
Google
slacking
Ads.
to you. There.
Okay.
So I feel like I'm doing something.
This is in the more options, HTML5 or advanced interactive ads that give you more control over your creatives. I actually don't use HTML5 media bundles like the zip files. I haven't actually done it at all. One of the things that
We're not a creative agency.
well, what's so funny too is the thing that I didn't like about it for the one client I inherited, it didn't actually give me a score. It always stayed pending. Actually, it's an amazing question that I actually don't have the answer to. If it was going to give me a good result, but let me ask actually chat Google up on that, and I will get back to you. That's
We're
a
also
really
going to
good
have
question.
to stop saying that is the truth. Like this whole we're a data-driven agency, not a creative agency with Performance Max. We're going to be pushed into creative no matter what, even if it's data-driven creative.
Yeah. So it's a really good that's a really good question that we haven't tested yet enough.
Yeah. Good job, Peter. Thanks for stumping us.
Yeah.
Publicly
I love
shaming.
it.
Khalid Alameri. What's up, buddy?
Hey.
Besides Northbeam, is there any way to see the effect of my YouTube campaign? We just talked about this today. That's so funny. Is there any other tool that I can use?
Check your view through conversions. That is something that you can use. Just know that they are also going to be slightly inaccurate depending upon how you're targeting. So what I mean by that is view through conversions are good. They will give you lead indicators. What it won't tell you though is this an audience that you already are engaging on other channels, which then it becomes a little bit more like I spent the money also for that same conversion. So view through conversions are good. One thing that would track is if you have control over a lot of the channels, like if you're the kind of channel agnostic person that is running all of your marketing, keep everything the exact same, but launch YouTube at a big enough spend to actually make a difference. And look at your analytics, which I know is a last click same day attributed network, but you should see, because YouTube isn't click based, more direct, organic, and even referral traffic. Referral traffic is if you're e-commerce, people are actually going to start to Google things like this company's coupon code. Those things. Those are really good indicators that you're actually hitting a good audience. But you should see an overall what they call MER. So a good way to measure if YouTube is working is check your MER. What's your global spend everywhere and what's your global revenue everywhere? When you launch YouTube, your global spend is going to obviously go up. But if your global revenue isn't going up from all channels, then know that you may not be attacking the right audience, or we haven't given enough time or even potentially enough ad spend. YouTube is the frontier that's going to be really, really difficult. There is an area inside of Google that is a little bit more risky, I would say, and it's called like lift measurement. We're actually on the phone with Google today with lift measurement. I don't know if I'm going to run it just yet, but what lift measurement does, and everyone's seen this. If you're on YouTube, it's like, hey, which one of these brands would you buy from? And they give you 4 brands, and then you select it. People actually run those. That's not Google. Those are actually companies running to see if you are identifying their brand and earning that brand trust. So that is a way to measure it, but if you're focused on ROAS, MER is a really good way to measure that.
Borislav. A couple of cues. Number 1, in a search campaign, expanded text ad is still performing much better CTRs conversions than any responsive ads. How normal is this? Worried about the sunsetting of expanded.
Yeah, they sunsetted it too. You can't even edit it anymore, which is horrible. But
what a kind way to say killed it. Sunsetting this. You can't, like, if you have a puppy, you know what I mean? Why are we lying about what happened to expanded text ads?
This is some really good steak. Yeah, we sunsetted Betsy.
We murdered this feature, and you can't touch it anymore. And we're not even sorry.
Yeah, so sunset this puppy. Borislav says, yeah. So here's what I've done. I've actually done this a few times since then for some brands that are really, really specific about their ad copy, where responsive just doesn't play well. You're going to get a lesser quality score, but take your expanded text ad, turn it into a responsive search ad, then repin your headline 1 and 2 and 3, and repin your descriptions 1 and 2. your ad rank's going to go from like excellent to poor because Google's like, hey, we're going to penalize you for doing this. But it is a way to keep those. I have seen actually some really good results with the client that we did this with. It was about 4 months ago, though, so I haven't really done it since then. I actually find that our responsive search ads eventually get way more traffic when they're unpinned. That actually offsets having different ad copy. But a good way to do this also is just try to say the same thing 3 different ways. So since you have 15 headlines, take your original headlines and say them in multiple different ways. And so you can pin one, which will usually bring your ad rank from excellent to good. So if you always want to have that headline like a brand name show up, that's decent. It's a good workaround. But yeah, it's complete crap that Google killed at. I think that it's just it basically says like, hey, we're going to take 3 out of the 15, and we're just going to not really care about how you want to present yourself, and we'll penalize you if you want to present yourself in a specific way. I think that was really short-sighted of them.
Josh Garris just joined as a good person. Thank you, Josh. We appreciate you. Welcome to the cult.
Hey, I love it. The cult.
Number 2 from Borislav. Is there a good way to communicate to the algo that new customers are more valuable than returning? Some of which we have gotten via other channels anyway, e.g. adjusting the order value.
Yes. So
is there a good way to gerrymander my data?
Right. It's actually, it's interesting. There's a 2-part answer to this. And one part is kind of a perhaps, and I'll tell you why. But the first part is you can, if you're doing lead generation, for example, assign a specific conversion value to a conversion action type. But if you have a customer that's more valuable, a good way to do this is however you're, and Borislav, I'm trying to blend e-commerce and lead generation because I'm not sure exactly which one you're running.
Use eCom.
Okay, for eCom, what I would actually do is a person that comes in and buys something, this is only going to be available for 90 days from the purchase. But if they buy something and they buy multiples, one thing you're going to have to do is capture G-CLID on that person at the point of purchase. So when you capture G-CLID, a lot of times it's going to be running like your Shopify, but there's apps that actually will capture G-CLID inside of Shopify of purchases. And if you're captured the G-CLID, upload that person back into Google Ads with an additional conversion value under a different conversion action. And what that'll do is because this G-CLID, Google knows about the person. And when you upload it with an additional conversion value, using maximize conversion value, it'll start to actually try to get those sales more frequently. You're going to have to upload those frequently though. So if you're just adding like 1 or 2 every few months, you're going to, after 2 years, it's going to start to take effect. So it needs to be high.
Then you'll be cooking with oil.
Yeah, right. Like 2025 is your year, buddy. But just know that it needs to be high frequency. Otherwise, you can actually start to work yourself against that model. If you upload like 30 in a month and then just don't do it next month, you're going to see it downshift. So know that it's going to be something that's evergreen. But uploading a person back in as a different conversion action with a different value. What's nice about this with the different conversion action is you can identify the added value. So you're not calculating your ROAS. Just know your metrics are going to be skewed now because you've added a conversion action that you have to count as a primary for the algorithm to see it. But segmented by conversion action, you can say, okay, what's my actual sales? What's my added back in sales? The other one, though, is if you have it from different customers, you can upload those as an audience and then assign a value to those. The problem, though, is that when you upload from other sources, Google's match rate is junk. It's like 5%, 10% sometimes, because it says if you get a conversion from Facebook, Google's like, I don't know who this person is. You don't have their name, email, phone number, address, city, states, all that stuff. And my match rate's low, so I can't count that person. So it might only be 1/10 as effective. So unless they're coming from Google Ads, that's usually the best way I've seen to teach the algorithm because Google already had a history of that person, knows who it is.
Could you, if you wanted to, could you juice the algo? Let's say that you've got a long sales cycle, B2B, 18 months to close. You go in and have your sales team anecdotally rank all the leads that are coming in. And then you tell Google the leads that you think are better or worth way more, just so you can, cut 18 months off of your learning cycle.
Yeah, we actually do it with the client. We call them quality leads. So their sales cycle is 6 months, which is on average. But I only get 3 months to tell Google what's going on. So because we couldn't actually take in the converted people that bought money and import those back in, anytime that they went into a portion of the sales process that's like, we're talking about design aspects of something specific, then we upload that person as a quality. That actually comes right from the sales team. We upload 50 to 100 each week. Now it's a high spend client though. They spend about 190 to 200,000 a month. But that tells me, okay, this campaign at that CPA actually has less or more quality leads than another campaign. So it's not just CPA driven, it's actually quality lead driven. So I'm actually giving myself a cost per quality lead and then adjusting my bids and my budgets and my campaigns that way.
That's a value bomb if you're listening, just FYI. Khalid, any recommended setup for the brand campaign if I use only YouTube traffic to the left up top of the funnel audiences?
I'll use only YouTube traffic to the left up top of the funnel audiences. I don't know what left up top means. I'm sorry, but there is a way to do this. Go into your audiences, create a new custom audience, and the custom audience is of anybody who saw a video as an ad. You have to make sure your YouTube channel is linked, and then you link that audience to that campaign of your brand, and then set it as a targeting or observe. Either way is completely fine. Depends on if you only want to target those people or if you want to simply just observe them. And then you see the people that Googled your brand name also saw your video as an ad. Make sure you're obviously using the video that you're using as an ad as your identifier, but it's right in your audiences, custom audience, add new custom audience. Anybody that viewed this video as an ad, put that video there. Do a 540-day subscription to that channel so you can run this evergreen, or to that audience so you can run this evergreen. Attach that either a use as an audience as an observe or a target. And then what that means is the people that Google the brand name did or did not see that ad, and you'll be able to identify the delta, especially if you use it as an observe. That like, hey, 30% of the people that Google the brand name saw that ad.
Elliot, if you have a huge store and you have a lot of product categories, how do you handle an asset group creation? Because PMax is letting you use just root product categories from GMC. And then he has an example here if you want to see it. Something like this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, can you go back one?
I can do anything you want.
So asset creation, I actually do it custom by item ID, which may not be the best. But if you have a huge store, I mean, I've done this with thousands of SKUs. It takes time, but that's why people pay us money, because that's all we do. My opinion is I set up the asset groups by your, as a general rule of thumb, if you don't have CAC, LTV, and return customer rate, I would set it up by your website's sitemap. And your website sitemap is a good way to market because you have a lot of times product categories and then you have subcategories. And depending upon how similar those subcategories are, a lot of times you can take your website's main category. So let's just say tables. And I'm going to use an example. If you sell tables and couches and lamps, I don't know, you're going to have 3 asset groups, one for tables, one for couches, and one for lamps. Your assets inside are going to be a sample of all of the things that you sell. Your listing groups are going to be the item IDs. You have to select them one by one of all of those products that are in there. And then the asset group URL is actually sending to the collection page, not necessarily a specific product. Your shopping is going to send it to your product, which is your listing groups. But your asset group can actually send it to like, hey, here's all of our lamps. Here's all of our couches. It's a good way to start before you identify what actually sells and the search terms that are being used to sell those, and then take a second stab at it by saying, okay, let's get more specific based on what I saw coming in.
So Elliot described the scenario you just described, saying you want to separate chairs and tables. You can't because you only choose one furniture as a category. And then he says, if you do this, it's impossible to have correct headers in your ad because what applies to chairs does not apply to tables and so on.
Yeah, so to have the different asset groups with your headers being tied to different listing groups of just those. So I don't use product categories as a way to identify asset groups. I use item ID. And then I add just the IDs of that category to that asset group. And then I use the targeting and the landing page and the assets for those items in those item IDs.
So you got to parse manually.
Yeah. So but what's nice about this is when you parse manually, you still have a search function. So for example, a lot of times you can capture 90% of the products if the product title in your feed is table. And then when you go into your item IDs, it says here's 27,000 SKUs and you do table. It's like, well, here's 7,000 SKUs. Perfect. Grab those.
Boislav, PMax is not going beyond a couple of hundred a daily spend. Context is consumer SaaS with single product, good search volumes. What are the best strategies to get PMax to expand the audience? I bet you used a custom audience here.
Sometimes you need to go a little more vague. Sometimes you need to look at your site itself. PMax is a smart engine. So if that site's, let's say that page or the site's not indexed well with Google, meaning I haven't indexed it, or my site titles, description, H1 through H6 tags, I'll kind of say something vague about like expansion and like glorious, like things that Google can't identify from a robot's perspective. So make sure your site's legible by Googlebot in terms of what you're trying to sell. So make sure your SEO is kind of up to date. But the other part is if you're using a restrictive bidding strategy, don't use maximize conversion value, however you're measuring your conversions. And then if the audience size is too specific, I usually add, even for lead generation, you can add 50 different asset groups there. And you can have an asset group that is, if you run out of room, essentially an asset group, like it's getting a little bit too big, a little bit too vague. Sometimes you launch multiple PMax campaigns for each group of assets, and then identify which one of those are actually working with that audience. So it's kind of a multi-step problem, but I would actually start with your site SEO. A lot of times that fixes this 80% of the time. We had this with another another client that when you actually hit right click and inspect the source, I'm like, oh, there's nothing here that Google can read. So that's never going to run because DSA can't scan it. Search engine can't index it, which means PMax can't read it. So it's going off of hopefully whoever you targeted in your custom audience. And if that's not fully built out, it doesn't have anywhere to go.
This isn't a question, but Elliot said something that I love. I talked to Google, but the person who's at the other side just does not understand the problem, so it was useless. That checks out.
You also may not have talked to Google. You may have talked to the 1099 employee, the contractor from another company with the Google email address.
Right.
Just also,
which honestly, the Google employees are pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Those
people like Mountain View, and those are they're sharp.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. Borislav, I'm skipping your follow-up because I think John just answered it. Feel free to poke at me if you don't think that's the case. Mike Griffin. Mike says, my dynamic retargeting campaign is contributing to a decent amount of view-through conversions, no direct conversions. How should I evaluate the performance of this campaign? He follows up to say, should I be taking view-through conversions into consideration?
Well, it depends. What it might be, you have to evaluate what your customer journey is. So if you have a dynamic retargeting campaign, make sure eCom Prodigy is firing. Make sure your feed's attached. Again, just some housekeeping items just to cross those off the list. And if you're not getting any conversions, but you're getting clicks, look at your attribution model, because your attribution model may be last click, and the majority of these people are Googling the brand name after keep seeing those ads. So notice that you could be sometimes not using the right method of approach because your attribution model is fixated on something that is in the wrong stage of the funnel. Look at the tools and settings attribution, go to model comparison, do first click, do data driven, do linear, see if you can see any actual clicks that turn into conversions, and start there to see if it is actually the attribution model. But if you're getting clicks and you're not getting conversions, but you're getting a bunch of view through conversions, also check your other sources. Do you have a whole bunch of good Facebook traffic that is also being just simply remarketed to on Google, but are converting on Facebook? Retargeting could be another scenario as well. That's where you really have to understand your customer's journey. Again, not to keep plugging it, but which is why I use Northbeam.
Northbeam. My Griffin. I already did this one. Can't do my job right. Alexander Dunn. Enjoyed the PMax Light idea. I tested this with a campaign with 4 PMax campaigns running. I added no audience signals, just the feed, but would not spend unless I fed it audiences. Do you see this?
If you use a PMax feed-only campaign, it is going to rely on a mix between remarketing and cold traffic. If you have multiple PMax campaigns running, it's going to assign what Google refers to as an inventory to a campaign. So, for example, you can have 3 PMax campaigns running with feed onlys, just as an example. And if you have another PMax campaign run that has overlap, it's just like, well, I win. Like, I have a better ad rank and I get chosen. So just know that if you do run a PMax Light, the overlapping targets has to be 0. You have to have very singular focus for each campaign. Otherwise, there's no inventory to assign to that campaign for Google to go after. So I would need more information and kind of look at the actual structured setup. But one thing just to check for fun, go to eCom Prodigy and see if that's actually firing at above like a 25 or 30%, which means, hey, there's actually people here that PMax can start to engage immediately. And if that's not firing, you're getting kind of like well, there's no one I can go after. And that other campaign scoops up all the cold traffic. So where do I go? And it doesn't have anywhere to go.
Boris, a note for you from Peter, a note for you from Boris. He said a couple of years ago I played around with HTML5 assets and resulted in a ton of bot traffic.
Interesting.
That
just seems like Performance Max by itself.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's anything that gets a higher permeation across their display network is going to result in more bot traffic.
Yeah, and that's because Google's looking for intent first. Those are people that click first.
Yeah, I'm not a meth addict. I have bug bites on my hands. So if anybody's wondering, like, why is Kasim?
Give me more of that ad spin, man.
I'm trying not to, but it's hard. Alexander Dunn. Is there a way to look under the hood of asset groups in GA? I have to report on last click. Will UTMs work for more visibility, at least for clicked placements?
Sort of. So what we're trying to hack into is a black box. And when you set it up a way that UTM can tell you what happened, you turn it into a search campaign, basically. What I mean by that is, depending upon your setup, if you look at the asset groups, one easy area to look at is go into your Insights tab, go into your search categories, and you're going to see a search term that is doing well, and then it's going to say 12 categories. 12 asset groups. Click on the 12 asset groups, and it'll say this asset group got this many clicks, this many conversions. This asset group got this many clicks, this many conversions. That's a way for your Google Ads to say, like, hey, this is the asset group that's actually getting the most amount of impressions, click, conversion rate, conversions, etc., conversion value, for example, if it's e-commerce. That will work that way. The other part, though, is if you use UTM parameters, you have to turn URL expansion off, and then you have to use only the asset group that inside your asset groups to define all URL, add in your UTM parameters there. What that's going to tell you is that asset group earned a click, but it's not going to tell you the channel within inside of that asset group that earned a click. So a display ad versus a discover ad versus a search ad are going to have the exact same UTM parameters. Now you'll be able to identify the asset group that brought you there. But what you essentially did is say, ignore any smart kind of targeting, turn off URL expansion, and only send traffic to this page on this network. You kind of recreated a search or display campaign, and which is that worth it at that point to leverage PMax, because you kind of got rid of the leveraging of PMax in order to identify that. So Google set it up very strategically to make it a black box.
There's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be, especially as we move forward and Google starts to kill other campaign types, there's going to be a lot of like cutting PMax up to make it a different campaign.
Yeah. The bad part is, like, when you want to get hyper specific, it's like, so you're running only on YouTube in your PMax campaign. Why not just run YouTube?
Yeah. Well, except when PMax takes YouTube campaigns, standalone campaigns away.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like when they,
you know what I mean?
When they take control. Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that's the part too where you have to look at now other things like how many views and the cost per view versus my daily budget, and you have to kind of, and then, or I know cost per click on search is $5. I'm getting 27 cents. It's obviously not searched very often, so you just have to be kind of understanding your account very well.
Dude, look what they took away. They took away smart shopping. They took away local. They took away GSP. What else did they take away? Was Discovery ever a standalone campaign type?
Discovery, yeah, I mean, it's still a campaign type, but they just rolled GSP into it.
So that's right. Was it ever standalone though? Was it ever like you could just?
Yes, but only for a very short time.
Okay, that's so. It's only a matter of time until YouTube goes away. Google Ads is just going to be PMax.
Well, I think they're gearing up for the Topics API, which is why if you're not, embracing Performance Max, no one knows what's going to happen next year. Like, it's going to be crazy. So,
have I told you my Topics API theory?
Yeah. I think we did it like 2 weeks ago on here. So
we might. We? Yeah. Well, if it's redundant, I'm sorry, but here's the theory. I just want to say this recorded just so everybody can be like, "Oh, Kasim was right." Google didn't kill Flock. All they did was they took window dressing, put it in front of Flock, and called it Topics API. So they're still using Flock internally, and then they're just giving us the three most recent flocks that people are in, and calling that Topics API.
Yeah, it's exactly right. They're just like, hey, what if we just tell them the benefits of what we're going to be doing rather than how? Oh, that's so much better.
Dude, you would have to show me the code to convince me otherwise. There's no way they put all that time, money, effort, energy, R&D into Flock, which is actually for them brilliant, and then just kill it because we all bitched about it. There's no way.
Nope. I 100% agree.
Alexander, John, I loved your maximize clicks tutorial. Never thought about leveraging this in certain situations. Do you think it will work well for a book launch, focusing on the name of the book or max conversion?
Focusing on the name of the book. Well, that means that it's branded traffic, in my opinion. So yes, I would say that this would work, but just know that what you're spending may not have a felt effect. So a lot of people will just spend into where really high ROAS goes, and that means that they're going to go there anyway. So the before and after effect is no additional revenue or conversions. So here's something to know is inside of your book launch, if you are marketing on Facebook, for example, if you do or do not run a brand campaign, you can actually very frequently increase or decrease the effectiveness of that Facebook campaign. It's really quite amazing. I accidentally hurt someone's Facebook campaign by stopping brand traffic. I know that happened because I looked at everything and I looked at all of their sources and all their metrics and said, well, when I stopped brand, CPA and Google or Facebook went 2x. It's because the people that I was remarketing from that good quality traffic on Facebook, I stopped. So Facebook wasn't enough to do it on its own. So there's a really deep conversation to go into, but from a very specific standpoint, if you're using maximize clicks on a book launch, what is going to happen is if you are going after the name of that book, but no one has a reason to Google it, you're not really going to maximize anything. So you're kind of saying like, hey, once they already find out about the book and want it, then maximize clicks. If you've already launched it on our channels and they found out about it and they want it, yes, absolutely. But just know that if you don't have that inbound traffic, it's going to be, a few clicks a day, maybe.
How much more weight does Google put on conversion actions under purchases versus qualified lead? I have a software client who has installs as qualified lead and purchases under primary goal.
They do not weight them any differently, the categories. The reason why the categories exist is usually to predetermine the categories that need to be chosen for a specific goal when you set up a campaign. So if you ever look at like a true view for actions, it's not going to go after like other conversions. It's like, no, you're driving conversions and these are the conversions that you're going to be going after, which is like purchases. So the categories were made so that Google can understand what you're trying to go after and do it on its own. But none of them weight differently than the other one. And that's why sometimes you can actually take a non-purchase conversion action and change it into a purchase category by going into the conversion action, just changing the label. So I don't believe, and I haven't seen, and I have no reason to believe that they weight them any differently, because I a lot of times will use custom conversion actions and then use a campaign rather than targeting the account conversion to the custom conversion actions that I stuck in there for a very specific campaign.
Sorry, I've got a redundant one here. I'm just trying to get through it.
Yep.
Josh says, loving the content. Thank you, Josh.
Awesome.
Leslie Drescher, PMax Live 3 months, opted to bid higher new customers than existing. Is that advised? It's an e-commerce site. Only the campaign is standard shopping. Client doesn't want separate remarketing campaigns.
Well,
client is fired, Leslie.
If the client doesn't want to separate the remarketing campaign, the problem is your standard shopping campaign isn't doing remarketing, and your PMax campaign is probably going to do more shopping and DSA on search than anything else in that category, and only 20% of its effort is going to go into remarketing.
Well, and you're exacerbating the issue too if new customers is applied, because then that deprioritizes remarketing instead of a campaign type that's already bad at remarketing.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we've taken a double down approach to the one chance at bat.
The client has opted out of anesthesia. They just decided with their expert medical opinion.
Here's some way to convince the client, because I think that this is a failed model in my opinion. Is you can bid higher for new customers. You're going to have a false positive in your Google Ads account, because whatever denominator of value you've given towards a new customer, Google has to be able to count between new versus returning. So you have to have your customer list uploaded. You have to select that customer list in your conversion settings as these are my existing customers. You have to append a value that you know is true. And then your ROAS is going to say 300%. But if they don't actually do that, you might actually have a 150%. You just doubled the amount of revenue that every new customer has. So hopefully that's rock solid as the case. The other part, though, is if you do have a PMax that campaign that is not necessarily going after an existing customer, like we don't have a PMax feed only with only the insight of a users on the site. If you do that, a lot of times it turns into a brand campaign. It's not remarketing. It's just going to go after the people that are going to try to find you anyway. So it's not really necessarily good for remarketing. You're going to have a separate remarketing campaign, just because the only real way to turn a PMax into a remarketing campaign is use feed only, no assets, URL expansion off. that is now it's a separate remarketing campaign. So hey, like now we have a separate remarketing campaign.
That's really funny. The client doesn't want a remarketing campaign, so we made this PMax campaign.
No, here's something I would give you though: is look at your time lag. If your time lag is over 2 days, there's a reason to run remarketing. It takes people, let's just say 2 days on average before they convert after they are impressed with an ad, which means I show Kasim ad. Did he buy? Well, he clicked and then he came back on his own. Why wouldn't you remarket those people that are coming back on their own? You know they're going to return and buy. So if your time lag is over 2 days, meaning, hey, we're getting the clicks and then people do come back and buy on their own without having to remarket them, let's start remarketing. Go into your tools and settings, go into your attribution model, look at your average engagements before a conversion. If it's 20% above 1, which means 20% of the people take at least 2 ad interactions or more, remarket, because these people have such a demand that they're actually coming back on their own again. So use those tools to say, hey, these people are taking longer and coming back on their own. Why can't we remarket to these people? That's just my opinion. If you wanted a separate remarketing campaign, use a separate dynamic remarketing campaign, add a customer list as an exclude audience, and then boom, now you're remarketing only for new customers. That's my opinion.
Jackie C just joined. Welcome, Jackie C. Thanks for being
here.
Elliot Fib, just a follow up, says thanks for the sitemap tip. That is brilliant. Unfortunately, I have 80,000 products.
Yeah, I know a good Google Ads agency that could do all that work for you for a small fee.
For a small fee, Elliot. Elliot goes on to say, question about budget. Does a $100 minimum for PMax apply to countries outside of the U.S.? For instance, in Germany, you have 80 million people. In the U.S., is 330 million people, which is 4 times more. What would you recommend a starting point for PMax in Germany? What are you doing with existing? The thing about that, though, is it's not really about the number of people. It's about the number of impressions, data points that you're feeding into PMax. So I don't think it's the size of the country as much as it is what PMax needs to have in order to learn.
Here's the problem is, no matter the ad spend, what you have to take into consideration is your customer's journey, how much in demand is the product. And when I say customer's journey, I mean how many times do they need to be re-engaged and how long does it take to convert? Then after that time has been calculated, you have to then think about how much daily ad spend you would need in all those channels. So if a person has a 25-day time lag and 7 clicks before they convert on average, you're going to need a higher ad spend because you're going to have to re-impress and re-engage that person on wherever they may be. And if you have $15 a day or $20 a day, it might say, well, I'm getting majority of my clicks and conversions from search. So my PMax campaign is a search campaign. The more ad spend you put into it, the more cold traffic you can engage, the more you can re-engage that same cold traffic that is now warm traffic wherever they may be in the ecosystem because it's omni-channel because it's PMax. And then you'll find out sometimes that more ad spend actually equals more efficiency because it's like taking your one search campaign and then turning into a YouTube and a display and a remarketing campaign and a shopping campaign. So the more ad spend you give it, the more chances for success on more areas, especially if you have a longer time to convert or a more of an interactions before they convert. Even if it's 2 days, but they take 4 interactions on average, means you're probably pretty competitively priced and there's other people selling the same product. So they're making their decision. So more ad spend means I don't just earn the first click and then say, crap, well, earn another cold click. Well, crap, earn another cold click. That's not very effective at what PMax was designed to do.
Tom Dent. I run search campaigns for multiple niches. Does Google optimize based on account or campaign level conversions? An HVAC lead is very different to a personal trainer lead. So how does Google optimize?
Google optimizes on the conversion action and will actually inherit that conversion action audience in a new campaign. Search, not so much. It's more keyword driven. But if you're running broad, then it's actually more conversion action driven. So phrase and exact match on search, for example, don't necessarily take into consideration the person more so than the actual search term. When you run broad, sometimes your search keywords and your search terms don't match up very well at all, but conversions happen. I will run broad, for example, on a beauty brand that I'm getting competitive traffic. Well, why is Google giving my non-brand, I'm just going to use this, let's just say it's not the product, but floor length dress. and then I get people looking for, an actual brand name of a company that also sells a floor length dress. It's not because it's a search term. It's Google says, I know this person is interested in the category of product that you're trying to sell through your search terms, so you two should meet. When you take phrase and exact into consideration, you separate that out and say, okay, well, ignore the person who's going to buy. Did they Google what you wanted to Google? No, well, you didn't win that. So 2 things here. It's conversion action based, and then the conversion action based on search is only leveraged if you're using broad. Primarily. Sometimes there's some overlap there.
Borislav, how much do you use the web UI versus the editor so late in your daily work?
I had a computer that wouldn't actually run the editor for like 2 years, so I'd use all web UI.
I learned the hard way.
I got really good at copying and pasting and shutting a whole bunch of things off.
I was born in the darkness. You merely adopted it.
It's so true. Like, I would take the change like 15 minutes longer than it needs to be because I was waiting for it's like, this may take a few minutes. You can do something else in the background. I'm like, this is all I'm doing.
Dude, the problem is editor goes down or freezes up all the damn time. So this whole like, oh, it's more efficient. It's like, well, is it really?
Yeah. It's sometimes really annoying.
What is the difference between eCom ID and ID in the Google Ads tag?
Same thing. ID is actually replacing eCom product ID. But if one is firing and it's showing the same ID as your feed ID product IDs, you're good to go.
Sometimes I think people just ask questions to see if you know the answer.
Right?
What weighs more, a Boeing 747 or a blue whale?
How much wood would a woodchuck chuck
Yeah.
if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
I have an account where I'm running dynamic search ads, and every single iteration of the ad that Google generates is the exact same headline. There's an explanation for this.
Yeah, it's sending it to the same page. So DSA takes into consideration your sitemap, and whatever your sitemap's page title is becomes your ad headline of the ad. So if you see your homepage says we're the best Google Ads agency and you're on DSA, and the title is always we're the best Google Ads agency, go into your dynamic search ads, click on landing pages, and it'll tell you the page that is sending traffic the most. And if you find that the title of that page is also the title of your ad, that's the reason. I love answering questions. This is fun.
Alexander Dunn, what is the best way to determine what percentage of sessions or users are repeat customers in GA? The new versus returning report doesn't really help. I know clean data requires third party, but any proxy.
Yeah, what I would actually say is set up a secondary conversion action, but the trigger is going to be difficult to set up. So here's what I mean by this is if you are looking at new versus repeat purchasers using Google Analytics, using Google Analytics, obviously Google Ads, have an event fire from a person that might have either like registered and made a purchase or started a new account and made a purchase or entered in their email address and made a purchase. A lot of times those are indicators that this is a new person. Make that as an event, that event added as a goal, import that goal as a secondary conversion action, overlay it to all of your existing campaigns. And it's a good indicator as, hey, this is actually bringing me new customers. Just know though, that your analytics source is last click, same day attributed, which means that they could have started from a different channel. They just finished on your channel. So don't say, aha, all my new customers, regardless of any other source, must come from this one. It's not. It's just meaning that this is where they ended up, not necessarily where they heard or started to think about you. So if you're running high amount of Facebook, you might actually be getting all of your awareness on Facebook that is converting as new customers in Google Ads. So don't kill your Facebook ads because of that. Again, Northbeam solves this problem.
We should have invested more in Northbeam.
Seriously, I know.
We should have bought more stock.
I know, Austin. If you're listening, I'm pimping you out here, man.
Yeah, at least that was his dinner, you know.
Yeah.
Soren Tutu, how much affects the campaign goals in Google Ads if your conversion value is set to 1 and not dynamic? Asking for a friend.
How much does it? How much affects the campaign's goal?
I think it's how much impact does conversion value have on the campaign goal if the value is set to 1 instead of being dynamic?
Oh, it just means that you can't use maximize conversion value. But if you use maximize conversions, you're fine. Just know that since you didn't assign a value, then maximize conversion value thinks you're making $1 for every time that happens. So if you have, like, let's just say, for example, a contact us form and a sale, and the contact us form is worth $1 and the sale is worth $10, maximize conversion value is going to ignore contact forms and go to sales. If they're both $10, it'll go after them equally. If one's worth $20 versus $10, it'll go after that more. Maximize conversions doesn't take into consideration conversion value and will just give you whatever you get.
I started running limited PMax, just GMC feed and assets, like 2 weeks ago instead of standard shopping. So far, it looks like it's 5 times cheaper. Is that normal? What do you think where they are display ads? What do you think where they are display ads? In search
Yeah,
of those too good to
so
be true.
they're actually heavy display dynamic remarketing. That's what smart shopping was. So what you're doing is you're mimicking smart shopping, which is a super effective network for conversions that are cheap because it's running heavy display ads to a person they think is going to buy and they know is going to buy. Sometimes you can crank this thing up and not see any more new sales. You're just going to see better efficiency. So don't spend too much into that because those are more likely, more often than not, people that were going to buy anyway. If you have your expansion turned on, that means you're now doing DSA. You're now doing DSA. If you leave it off, you're going to still get those really inexpensive dynamic remarketing display clicks. And it's cheap because it's display and it's to an audience. That is yours.
Google always labels their features like the Terminator, Flock Performance Max.
That's so true. I always found it's the funniest thing because it seems like I'm such an idiot when I get on client calls. Because we're like, search, display, YouTube, GSP, just performance
Max.
Yeah. No. It's like, okay.
Optimus Prime.
Yeah, right. It's like kickass.
Yeah.
.com. Like, it's just terrible. Like, it feels so childish.
There's a kid at my son's school, and his father, I don't know what's wrong with him, but he names his kids like I swear to God, one of his kids names something like Performance Max. Like, it's just, I'm like, are you?
This is Max Power Moran.
I swear to God, it's that bad. It's actually a little worse. Soren Tutu, can you convert a PMax campaign free market only? We kind of talked on that.
Yeah, that's a feed only.
Yeah. Mike Griffin, I'm launching a PMax campaign for one product where the LTV equals the first purchase AOV, so no repeat purchases. What bidding strategy do you suggest?
Maximize conversion value is going to keep you defaulted at 2x. It's also going to go after more expensive, more bottom of the funnel traffic. You're going to limit yourself in scale, though, but just know that you really have no other way to build yourself out of that. You can try maximize conversions, which would be a little more aggressive, and then try TCPA. It'll actually go after anybody that's going to buy, not just more expensive ones, which means it's probably a better strategy for you. Just know that it is more scalable, but it is going to be less quote unquote profitable during scale.
Why are we not able to do location bid adjustments in PMax?
That's a really good question. I actually have looked at Performance Max campaigns, and I actually started to replicate Performance Max campaigns by region, just because location bid only applies to a channel. So what they basically say is, well, I want to pay like 20% more. It's like, yes, but is that top of funnel? Well, not really. There's no audience for that. So it's kind of interesting where you don't have the bids based on the audience, bids based on location, because it can't necessarily apply to a channel and its competitiveness like it can on some other different campaign types. The real answer, though, is Google just said interested in or frequently in, and it didn't really matter where they actually were. I think that's the real truth. But now that they said in or frequently in, separate out your PMax campaigns by location. Make sure you duplicate the PMax campaign. Don't just start fresh. You're going to go through 6 weeks of learning all over again.
I'm running a PMax campaign using the smart shopping hack I've been hearing about. We sell products ranging from $500 to $10K. Which bid strategy do you recommend? Very low LTV.
I want to keep this very clear. The smart shopping hack that we're using is going to have really good performance because it's primarily going to existing traffic with heavy remarketing. Please, 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 everyone understand that. Existing traffic more often and heavy remarketing. What this means is that a lot of times your other PMax campaigns that's feeding you all the new cold traffic is going to convert in that smart shopping hack. So just know that those two are tied together very closely. One's going to have a better better CPA and ROAS because it is, again, more heavy remarketing and heavy display. So just know that that's going to be a thing. You can't don't shut off your primary PMax campaigns because your feed only does better. You'll kill your feed only eventually. And then when you scale feed only, you just beat the same people over the head harder with a hammer and say, why aren't you buying yet? So no new traffic or new sales come in. So just know that it's a very niche specific campaign type that was built to support the new PMax campaigns driving new cold traffic that you're getting. So just know that to be true. So what bidding strategy do you recommend? How much do you want to pay for remarketing is your answer.
You commented earlier on cross-targeting from social campaigns. If you use UTMs for the social, do you feel good about using these custom segments in GA as solid co-targeting / remarketing?
Not anymore. GA actually really doesn't even identify UTM parameters from social traffic. That's why a lot of times if your Google or if your Facebook says, hey, made 10 conversions, like 2 are in social and 8 directs. Analytics just cannot really see social traffic well because of the iOS issue.
Running a subscription product with a 30-day trial, is there a way we only get Google to favor those who don't cancel and stay at day 30 and beyond?
Only track the people that stay 30 days and beyond, honestly. Don't even count free trials. If you want to count free trials, count them as a secondary conversion. Yep. Or count the 30-day free trials as a primary conversion action with a value of $5, and then the 30 days and beyond with a value of $5,000. You'll still get both, but you're going to weight heavily, way more towards the people that are staying 30 days and beyond, so you don't kill your free trial subscriptions.
Josh, I'm skipping you because it looks like we just answered this. Yes. John Hogue. In a previous video, Kasim mentioned that PMax is bad for products with short seasons. What about products with longer seasons, such as 6 good months a year and 6 slow months?
In previous Kasim mentioned,
so it's still seasonal, but the seasons are broader. So instead of just Mother's Day, it's like,
got it.
All of summer.
If you do that, what I would say is, I actually just had training internally about this. Use a non-restricted bidding strategy and simply limit the amount of traffic based on your daily ad spend. So if you have 6 months, start ramping up 1 month before your 6 months using maximize conversion value. You're going to see that money all of a sudden just becomes more and more effective in CPA and ROAS because the people you've been warming up is starting to convert. But if you use a T-ROAS, a TCPA, it will not find them. They're not immediately ready to buy, and you will miss your ramp-up season because you predetermined the people that were in market to not be in market because the time you targeted them was when it was out of market.
Do you think Google has seasonality adjustments, and I think they just applied them to PMax? Are they worth playing with at all? I've never touched them.
Yeah, they're worth it. I mean, it basically applies more. I don't see a reason why you'd use that rather than just increasing your budget. I don't see an algorithmic reason to. So Google's insight, though, if you've been running Google ads long enough, will be like, hey, your busy season's next month. Like, it'll actually tell you when to start ramping it up. So even without using that tool.
Borislav, can you guys make a video on Northbeam a bit more on how it works under the hood in terms of attribution so we can get more converts? I'm scared of black boxes. We do a tutorial on Northbeam.
Yeah, I think so. Here's my opinion. I'd actually just reach out to them. They're a massive team now. So reach out to them.
Tell them we referred you. Yes. Ask them, does Solutions 8 get commissions on this?
Yeah, see, I'm only here because John said to come here.
Yeah.
John but honestly, here's my fault. I know very intricately exactly how it works, but it's their IP. So I don't know what I can and should say. Just know that everything that they're going to tell you is the truth. It is actually amazing. They built something no one else has, which is why Kasim and I invested in it. But they will be able to give you all of the answers to your question in a sense that I don't accidentally say, hey, because they're doing this, and then just like, say something I'm not supposed to say. So my opinion is reach out to them. They're excellent at demos. Which
applies maybe to what Soren's asking for here. Is it good used only with Google Ads? How I know Soren's over 30, by the way. Magento. I can't see a Magento integration.
Yeah, so they're also rapidly expanding their integrations, and depending upon, and I know Soren, I don't know where you're at in your ad spend, but they will also build things for customers that are worthwhile to build it for. So I don't mean to say like, well, if you're big enough, they'll do it. But if you are, yeah, they've done it before.
But that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So funny. Elliot says, and now since you know that agency which can do ID mapping for a small fee, I will share here something that has crossed my mind and will save you some time. Okay, I'm excited. I may use API to create custom labels in GMC and then use that. I could use bottom level cats and create custom labels with the same name. That should work.
Yeah, or even Data Feed Watch could do this too. Like Data Feed Watch will give you the whole thing and you can just apply it. So you don't even need to use an API. If you wanted to use a custom label, you can hop into Data Feed Watch, say, hey, all of these, apply this custom label, and then it transfers into GMC. So you can absolutely do that too.
Did you see the requirements DFW had for our co-branded webinar?
Yeah, it's
It's gonna
there's
be
like
a degree, dude.
there's like 7 things we need to do before we can do a webinar with them. It's like a pre-rehearsal. I'm like, I know this stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, y'all, we'll show up the day of. This is too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. It's like fly in, do dress rehearsal. I'm like, it's a webinar.
Yeah. That's what happens when you have a director of marketing. Hopefully they never see this. We love you. Can you add new blog posts, new products in the first 6 weeks of PMax campaign? Let's say we have 2,500 products. Can we add 300 more?
Can you add new blog posts, new products in the first 6 weeks of PMax? Yeah, but I'm curious as to why you're sending PMax traffic to your blog posts. That's
Follow your expansion.
Yeah, usually follow your expansion means like 1 to 2% of your traffic that's on your asset groups or your feed. So if you're using asset groups to send traffic to blog posts, my opinion is it's probably a more expensive network because you're going to pay for search traffic as well. So I wouldn't use PMax for blog posts, or I'd have a PMax only for blog posts and really limit the spend. Yes, you can add 300 more products to your 2,500. Just know that no matter what you do, 6 weeks before making any massive changes is going to give you the best results. Will it decrease your efficiency by 1%? Maybe 20%, maybe. It all depends on if there is actually people ready to buy what it is you're selling. And then you add 300 more products if people want to buy more. The last 2,500 products that are getting warmed up traffic will most likely be ignored. So it just depends on how much an audience has from Google that they want to send that traffic to.
What attribution model do you recommend?
I default to data driven because they apply a view attribution as a click
Google
attribution.
defaults to data driven.
Yeah, it's because it's like, hey, we know they didn't click, but we showed them 7 YouTube ads, so we're going to count that as a click. Like that's what attribution data driven does. It does apply view attribution as a conversion action. But I usually will set it up custom. If you're running a brand campaign, data driven will actually sometimes give more conversions to your brand name than it needs, than it should have, because you had one cold traffic click, 5 brand clicks, and like, well, brand got 4 of those, 2 of those 5. It's like, not really. So I use a model comparison tool, and then depending upon if you're running brand or not, or if you're running top of funnel or not, as a reviewer or click attributed, I use a model comparison tool to tell me the campaign I know should earn more conversions for what I'm trying to get it to do. I choose the attribution model that gives that more conversions, if that makes sense.
One day I'd love to hear the backstory of how John and Kasim met. FA's been pushing me for this. He's like, dude, we have to do the origin story. So we'll put that on the calendar. Also, kudos to I was about to make a joke, but I decided not to. Also, kudos to Kasim on his in-stream CTAs for leads and videos. I have YouTube Premium and he stream rolled to leave at the end of Dynamic.
Steam rolled to leave at the end. Yeah, so basically it was like we sold him with an ad without having to have an ad run because he doesn't see ads. That's awesome.
60 seconds. Alexander, have you guys ever worked with clients who run direct mail? Yes. Can't use co-op audiences, but if you're an existing customer, can you load those lists into concert with direct mailings?
Have you guys ever worked with clients who run direct mail? I can't use co-op audiences, but if existing customers, yes, with very bad results. Because direct mail we usually use as a support tool. It's like, hey, you're going to receive this soon, and hey, you have received it. Usually you have to use like YouTube and display on that, which we're going to an audience that we just interrupted in a tool that was built for intent. So if you think that the audience that you're running direct mail to is hot, it will have a great result. But if you're just like sneak attack and they're like, I don't need this, Google's never going to help you on that.
Look at Soren's story, dude. 6 years been working for an eCom shop, and when I joined, they were selling $50K per year. Finished last year with over $1 million.
Nice.
Oh yeah, good for you.
I could tell that you've been doing this for 6 years because you said AdWords.
That's what I was saying too.
Yeah.
If targeting a competitor's brand name where there are currently no ads running at all, it's low search volume. Should I use manual CPC or maximize clicks? If no ads are running, what is low CPC?
Target a competitor's brand name where there are currently no ads running at all. If they're not running ads and also no other competitors are running ads, maximize clicks. If there are other competitors also running ads to their brand name, manual CPC, because it's going to get expensive and you need to control that cost.
You guys, we love you dearly and deeply. We're a Google Ads agency and we want to work with you. So if you want a Google Ads agency, hire us. How do I say this?
Like now. Come on. I'm an excellent ad copywriter. Why haven't you done it?
Give me money.